Good afternoon, Mole Class. We are very excited today because we're carrying on with our new book, Slime. And there's lots of children behind me, or behind the camera, and they're waving at you now. Yes, they're waving. So, let's carry on so we can read as much as possible. Ned's aunt owned the Isle of Mulch. She was his mother's much older sister, and her name was Greta Greed. High on a hill overlooking the whole island squatted Kitty Litter Castle, a huge medieval fortress that the lady called home. It was a world away from the tiny cottage that Ned shared with his family. Greed lived there alone, which was how she liked it. Her only company was her 101 cats. These cats were fearsome beasts. She had them to scare her nasty little children away. The lady loathed children, especially her poor nephew Ned. Aunt Greta never ever did a thing to help him. For her, children ruined the Isle of Mulch with their games, their chatter, and worst of all, their stench. Aunt Greta should be the last person to complain about a smell, as she stunk of cat pee. Ugh. Because Aunt Greta owned the entire island, she had power over all those who lived there. The lady rewarded those grown-ups on Mulch who detested children almost as much as she did. One such man was Sir Walter Rath. He was a nasty old wretch whom Greed had made headmaster of the only school on the island, Mulch School for Revolting Children. The only thing that gave Rath pleasure was expelling children from his school. Like so many others, Ned had suffered that fate. There was only one toy shop on the island. Greed had given care of it to twin brothers, Edmund and Edmund Envy, had named the shop Envy's Emporium. But it was nothing more than a front for terrorising children. Ned had had a particularly nasty time when he'd last visited. Another resident of Mulch was Madame Silenzio Sloth. The lady was supposed to be a piano teacher, but she was too lazy to teach children anything. Sloth was a virtuoso of cruelty. Ned had the misfortune of being one of her pupils, and when he dared to complain, all hell broke loose. Captain Pride was an uptight ex-soldier whom Greed had appointed Mulch's park-keeper. The captain ensured no one could ever enjoy the island's only public park, especially not little people like Ned. Ice cream sellers Glenn and Glenda Glutton made sure children never got to enjoy an ice cream, ever. The married couple zoomed around the island in their van looking for children to rob. They took their pocket money and then sped off without giving them their ice cream. If the Gluttons had lived anywhere else in the world, other than Mulch, they would have been locked up in prison and the key thrown away. However, Greed delighted in their scam, and ensured the pair were never brought to justice, even when they stole from her own nephew Ned. So this little island was home to a large number of horrible grown-ups. But there was a child on the island who was probably as bad. Poor Ned was related to her. It was his sister. Chapter 2. A Beastly Girl. Ned's sister Jemima liked nothing more than playing horrid tricks on her little brother. Tricks that made the girl snigger to herself all day and all night. Tee-hee-hee-hee. It wasn't a nice snigger, it was a nasty snigger, as if she knew she was beastly. The tricks were all absolutely foul. Dropping wiggly-waggly worms down the back of her little brother's pyjamas. Yikes! Replacing Ned's toothpaste with glue so his teeth stuck together. Emptying the jar of his favourite marmalade and replacing it with mashed up wasps. Yuck! Painting everything in her little brother's room bright purple. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, his toys and clothes, even his pet gerbil. No! Hiding a big furry spider at the end of his bed so it nibbled his toes. Ah! Yow! Dusting the toilet seat with chili powder so the boy's body was too hotty. Swapping Ned's favourite chocolate-coated raisins with gerbil droppings. Ugh. Breaking wind into an old wooden box for a week, then opening it in Ned's bedroom so he would suffer the pontasmagoria. Pooh! However, all of this was nothing compared to the nightmarish trick Jemima was planning for her little brother. Pontasmoria is another real word you will find with ease in your Williams Dictionary. Chapter 3. Gunk. Jemima was a child who revelled in all things yucky. Not just spiders and worms, but gooey things too. All around the little cottage where the family lived, the girl had hidden gunk in jars. things you found under rocks, things you found at the bottom of ponds, things you found lurking down the plug hole. Jemima would scoop up anything nasty and deposit it in a jar. Over time, she had collected hundreds and hundreds of jars of all different kinds of gunk. Every single one had a label on it, so Jemima could remember what was what. One shudders to think how the girl collected some of these revolting things. You would not want to touch this stuff with your bare hands. Badger snot, frog spawn, slippery sludge, granny dribble, snail trail, jellyfish, foot cheese, pigeon poop, rotten eggs, toenail grot, old man's phlegm, underarm sweat, off custard, furballs, stinging nettle juice, gerbil wee, that weird yellow stuff that ladybirds leave on your finger, liquidized worms, belly button fluff, wet bottom burps, earwax, spider sick, crushed caterpillars, very mouldy mould, slug juice, bat eggs, and something unspeakable that cannot be named. Here you go, there's all her jars. At the bottom of every wardrobe, at the back of every cupboard, under the floorboards, there were jars and jars and more jars. Jemima was stockpiling them in the family cottage as she wanted to play the most humongous trick on her little brother. A trick that would make him scream the house down. Ah! A scream that would echo all over the Isle of Mulch forever. Jemima would snigger herself to sleep thinking about her devilish plan. Dee-hee-hee-hee-hee. There was just one problem. Her little brother was on to her. Chapter 4. Bogeys under the bed. Ned found the jars, just one jar at first. In a deep sleep, Ned had rolled off his bed in the dead of night. Thud! Ouch! The fall woke him up. Just as he was about to haul himself back up, Ned noticed something glinting in the darkness under his bed. He reached out and found it was a jar. The label, in his sister's scrawled handwriting, read simply, Bogeys. On closer inspection, he discovered it really was a jar bursting with bogeys. They looked very much like Jemima's. She had picked, licked and flicked so many at Ned over the years that he could recognise them in any lineup in an instant. Hers were always a brownish shade of green. At once, Ned knew his wicked sister was up to something. But why had she hidden her own bogeys in a jar under his bed? Lifting up the sheets, he saw that this was just one of what must have been 100 jars under there, each containing something more disgusting than the last. Ned's eyes bulged as he read the labels. Ground ants, boiled dandruff, yellow pus, cheesy burps, meaty burps, monkey sweat, wart soup. Ugh. Got all of those. Remember to pause the video if you want to see the pictures a bit more. One by one, Ned pulled all the jars out from under his bed. He was careful not to clink them together. The sound would wake up his wicked sister, who was sleeping in her room next door. Then Ned hoisted himself up onto his battered old wheelchair so he could go hunting for more jars. One good thing about getting around on wheels is that you can glide silently and undetected, as long as you don't bump into the furniture, donk, or run over a cat. Meow! Ned rolled past his sister's bedroom and headed into the living room. Now, thought Ned, where would be good hiding places? It turned out everywhere. There were jars, and more jars of yucktastic stuff hidden all over the room. Behind the curtains, under the sofa, on top of the bookshelf, in the sideboard, under the cushions, behind the plant pot, inside the lampshade, under the coffee table. The same was true of the kitchen and the hallway. Rolling past the boiler cupboard, Ned heard gurgling. Gurgle, furgle, durgle. On opening the door, he could see jars and jars with gunk oozing out of them. The heat from the boiler must have made the gunk expand. It was a wonder that one of the jars hadn't exploded. Once again, all the jars were labelled, each full of something more puzzling than the last. What was all this stuff? Plume, gronge, spludge, fodgle, winky-dink, muppety, hunna, fonk, wally bumps, noodle, boo-boo, dunty-punt, snud, miggle, piffle-paffle, zonty-wanty woo-wah, plutz, and bim-bam-booly. I have no idea. And more importantly, what was she planning to do with it all? The boy approached his mother and father's room. He peeked through the gap in the door. Their bed was empty. It was the early hours of the morning and the pair were already at work. No doubt Dad was heading out to sea and Mum was setting up her market stall. A quick search by Ned of the back of their wardrobes revealed jars, jars, and more jars. Curiouser and curiouser, he muttered to himself. Then the boy rolled back into the hall, making his way towards his dreaded sister's bedroom. Trundle, trundle, trundle. Ned was sure somewhere in there would be the answer. He put his ear up against the door. Zzz, zzz, zzz. Jemima was fast asleep, snoring like a steam train. The sign on her bedroom door read, "Entry strictly forbidden. Any other unauthorised persons who go beyond this point will get a boot up the bottom." I'm going to have to stop there for today. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of The Slime. Bye.